There's no question. This Congress for many years has had a problem with spending. The Democratic Congress developed a bigger and bigger appetite for spending for 40 years, as it held the majority for years and years. Then Republicans took the House in 1995, and they forced a balanced budget on President Clinton. They had friction between the president and the Congress, and that allowed this country to have a balanced budget. Who would have ever thought? I certainly wouldn't. I know I've got some Democrat friends that would have thought it, but I wouldn't have. But when we got a Republican president and we had Republican majorities in the House and Senate, we began to spend again. There wasn't the friction there to hold spending down, and Republicans, I would submit, lost their way, began spending too much money. My first year in Congress in 2005 and 2006, we shouldn't have spent the money we did, and I can recall being here on the floor and having Democratic friends beating us up, rightfully so, because in 2006 we spent $160 billion more than we had coming in. We didn't have to do that. We shouldn't have done that. I would never have dreamed that 5 short years later that with the Democratic majority, the spending would have exploded once they had no friction between a Democratic president and a Democratic Congress, and that we would go from the $160 billion in deficit spending in 2006 that Republicans got beat up for to $1.6 trillion in deficit spending, 10 times more, and people still thinking that's somehow okay. It wasn't okay for Republicans to overspend by $160 billion, and it's not okay for this Democratic Senate and President to continue to push to spend $1.6 trillion, more than the $2.2 trillion we supposedly will have come in. Now we're told today we're going to have a vote on a Republican bill. A little surprising to some of us Republicans. We passed a bill, cut, cap, and balance. It wasn't what I wanted. I liked the balanced budget amendment with a percentage of GDP cap on spending to help rein Congress in, and that was negotiable on the percentage. But it also had $111 billion out of $1.6 trillion that would have been cut from spending. That just wasn't enough. But the balanced budget amendment, if it had been passed and become part of the law, was enough of a game changer. It was worth voting for. Then the Senate sits back and said, we're not going to go for that. We're not even going to pass anything, so pass something else. And now our leadership has heard the call of Leader Reid down the hall and is going to bring another bill. And I know the intentions of both sides of the aisle. They want the best for the country. I get that. I understand that. We have different ideas on how that can be done. And I know that there are people in my party that want to keep beating up on me because I can't vote for a bill that only cuts $1 trillion out of 15 to 16 trillion that will be deficit spending over the next 10 years. Because it's easy to do the math. We cut $1 trillion out of 15, 16 trillion over the next 10 years. And if we can keep doing that, and there's no assurance we can, every 10 years cut another $1 trillion, then when I have my 207th birthday, we can celebrate that year a balanced budget. And we will have only added $120 trillion to the $14.3 trillion deficit now. I can't vote for that. Politically, we're told, gee, this is the political thing to do. You got to do the political thing. If you don't vote for Boehner bill, you're voting for Obama. That's not true. If the Senate will pass anything, then we could drive this to a conference committee and get a compromise. The Senate has to pass something. Well, think about this scenario very quickly. we passed this, say hypothetically, the Senate said, oh, well, you pushed us to the edge of the cliff. We didn't want to vote for this. Then they pass it just like we did, and the president said, I was going to veto it, but we're on the edge of the cliff. 100% Republican bill. They wouldn't compromise, and now they say, well, gee,